Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we've all been waiting for. This is the NFL Catch-Up Show with your host, Mr. Madden. So, obviously, on Friday night or Friday morning in the UK at 1 a.m, we saw the Minnesota Vikings take on the Los Angeles Chargers at the Chargers Stadium. We did see a very, very high performance from both players. The quarterback of Minnesota, Carson Wentz, passing yards 144 yards with a one touchdown. And then the other NFL quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, Max Bosma, passing yards 13 yards, no touchdowns. He came on up towards the end of the game. The top rusher for the Minnesota Vikings was Xavier Scott with 16 yards and 0 touchdowns. We then also had the top rusher from the LA Chargers, Kamani Vidal, 117 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 rushing touchdown. Top receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, obviously Justin Jefferson with 74 yards and 0 touchdowns. And then Ladd McConkey, 88 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown. So, in this game, we saw a massive run of play between Ladd McConkey with a 1 receiving touchdown, Grande Grasden 1 receiving touchdown, Trey Harris 1 receiving touchdown, and obviously the other touchdown being Kamani Vidal, the rushing touchdown. Jordan Addison scored the Minnesota Vikings touchdown, which was a receiving touchdown, which went down on Carson Wentz as a passing touchdown. In the first quarter, the Minnesota Vikings no score blowed out 7-0 after the first quarter to the LA Chargers. In the second quarter, it was 3-14. So 14 points for the LA Chargers, meaning at halftime they led by 21-3. There was a field goal miss as well just before halftime. It could have been 24-3 at halftime. He missed the field goal. He missed it right, left. In the third quarter, the Minnesota Vikings took that quarter 7-3, meaning that the game was then at 24-10. Obviously, we then saw a 13-0 rout in the fourth quarter to make the scoreline the 37-10. And obviously, that is the Chargers back to winning ways, and a great performance for Justin Herbert with 227 passing yards and 3 wonderful touchdowns. That is it for the LA Chargers. Moving on, the Chicago Bears with a game against the Baltimore Ravens. A 16-30 Ravens win, that one. Caleb Williams, the passing of 285 yards, 0 touchdowns for him. Trevor Huntley, the Baltimore Ravens quarterback, still no Lamar Jackson at the moment, still out injured with 186 yards and 1 touchdown. Moving on, we then move on to DeMar Swift with 45 yards rushing with 1 touchdown for the Chicago Bears, and Derrick Henry with 71 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Great play from that bloke. Receiving on doing news of the Chicago Bears, 114 yards, 0 touchdowns, and Zay Flowers also 63 yards for Zay Flowers for the Baltimore Ravens. In this game, there was a touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns for Derrick Henry and Trevor Huntley, obviously with Kalala one touchdown, one receiving touchdown, so it goes down for the quarterback. Trevor Huntley picks up his touchdown pass. DeMar Swift with one rushing touchdown. Obviously, that does not count for the quarterback. That is a rushing touchdown. In the first quarter, it was 6-0 to the Chicago Bears. In the second quarter, the Baltimore Ravens wiped them for 10-6 at half time. They come out in the second half out of half time and took another 6 points in the third, meaning that it was 16-6. In the fourth quarter, it was a tight quarter, but the Baltimore Ravens win the fourth quarter with a 14-10 fourth quarter, meaning that we ended up with a 30-16 win for the Baltimore Ravens. That means the Ravens have finally got that unbeaten, that losing streak to an end. Moving on, the Miami Dolphins, another team that have struggled this year. Great game for the Miami Dolphins against the Atlanta Falcons. We did see a fair few different possessions. Miami Dolphins finally winning the game at 34-10, and Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins player, 205 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Kirk Cousins, 173 yards, 0 touchdowns. Wow. A little bit harsh for Kirk Cousins. Hasn't had much game time recently, so he's a little bit on the down. Hopefully in his next game he can look a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. Top rushings in this game were Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins, rushing 67 yards. He did not get a rushing touchdown. And then Ben Robinson, 25 rushing yards. Didn't get a touchdown either. They were the top 2 rushers. And then the top receivers were Jake Wardle, receiving yards, 199 yards, just 1 off the ton, and 1 receiving touchdown for that fella. And Kyle Pitts, receiving yards, 59 yards. Obviously, he's having a good little run of games. Jay Wardle, 1 receiving touchdown. M. Washington, 1 receiving touchdown. Devon Achane, 1 receiving touchdown. O. Gordon, 1 receiving touchdown. And Alijair, the rushing touchdown scorer for the Atlanta Falcons. This game was 7-0 to the Miami Dolphins in the first quarter. It was 17-3 it was 10-3 in the second quarter. Going into halftime, that meant it was 17-3. The Miami Dolphins came out and won the third quarter 7-0, and then won the fourth quarter 10-7, meaning that Miami Dolphins won every single quarter, and they also won the match 34-10, and that's that one. That also runs their losing streak of games, so hopefully they can maybe pick up on a bit of a performance. The Tennessee Titans, yes, this is starting to look good. If you are the Tennessee Titans, you are starting to get the flow of things with your new rookie quarterback. Cam Ward, 259 passing yards, 1 touchdown. But on the other side is Daniel Jones, 272 yards, passing yards, 3 touchdowns in the Tennessee Titans 14 to the Indianapolis Colts 38, ladies and gentlemen. We also saw T. Spears, one rushing touchdown, 59 yards. And we also saw Jay Taylor with 2 rushing touchdowns for 153 yards, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to the top receivers, C. Dyke for the Tennessee Titans, 93 receiving yards. And Michael Pittman, the 95 yards, 1 receiving touchdown as well. That is that for the top receivers of this game. The Tennessee Titans scorers were T. Spears with 1 rushing touchdown and G. Helm with 1 receiving touchdown. Lovely stuff. Jay Taylor scoring 2 rushing touchdowns, which we've already counted on because he was the top rusher in the match with 153 yards. Michael Pittman with 1 receiving touchdown for 95 yards. Jay Downs with 1 receiving touchdown, and Jay Taylor with a receiving touchdown to go along with all of his 2 rushes. He also had a receiving touchdown as well. In this game, we saw a 10-0 Indianapolis Colts with first quarter, a 10-0 win. In the second quarter, we saw a 7-7 score. In half-time, we saw a 17-7. In the third quarter, we saw a 14-0 for the Indianapolis Colts. And in the fourth quarter, we saw another very, very, like we saw in the second quarter, very tight one, 7-7. And in that end, it ended the Tennessee Titans 14 to the Indianapolis Colts 38. Ladies and gentlemen, the Colts are on fire. It's all thanks to their new quarterback, Daniel Jones. Dallas Cowboys, another difficult performance again from the Dallas Cowboys against a very good Denver Broncos lineup. So it was quite good. Dak Prescott with 188 yards, passing 1 passing touchdown. Jay Milton, 58 passing yards, 0 touchdowns. But the standout of the game was Bo Nix, the 247 yards for 4 touchdown passes. That is incredible from the rookie. Jay Williams, 41 rushing yards, was the Cowboys' 2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns for that 41 yards. Jay Dobbins, 111 yards, 0 touchdowns. That was the 2 top rushers in the game. The top receivers in the games was George Pickens for 78 yards, no touchdowns for him. Tom Franklin, 89 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and that was that in that section for the top receivers. And the quarterback rushing, Dak Prescott was rushing for 31 yards, and Bo Nix with 61 yards in that one. We also saw touchdowns from Jay Tolbert, which is 1 receiving touchdown, which was Dak Prescott throwing, and Jay Williams with his 2 rushing touchdowns, which we've already spoke about. R. Harvey with the 2 rushing touchdowns. T. Franklin for 2 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. R. Harvey with a receiving touchdown to go with his 2 rushers. And P. Bryant for 1 receiving touchdown to make Bo Nix have 4 passing touchdowns. It was in the first quarter, it was 3-14. In the second, it was 7-13. At half time, it was 27-10. In the third quarter, we saw a 7-3 win for the Dallas Cowboys, meaning they got back into it. Looked like it was going to be get close. But in the fourth quarter, Dallas Cowboys only scored 7, and the Bonix front line scored 14 points in that quarter, meaning that we saw a Dallas Cowboys 24-44 Denver Broncos win. And the thing that we have to say is it's not like a freight train anymore for the Dallas Cowboys. It did used to be pretty easy for them. Lovely. Moving on to one of Sunday night's games in the way of Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints. Baker Mayfield, 152 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, didn't need them. Rattler, 136 passing yards, 0 touchdowns. T-Sal, 128 passing yards, 0 touchdowns as well. Top rushers in this game was S. Tucker, 42 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, which was the only touchdown on the offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then an A. Kamara, 21 yards, rushing, 0 touchdowns for the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, New Orleans Saints' only points in this game were a field goal. The top receivers in this match were, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, T. Johnson, 43 receiving yards, and Rahid, 75 receiving yards for the New Orleans Saints. The quarterback rushing, both Rattler and Sal both had 12 rushing yards. All I know is after a few sacks, Baker Mayfield had only -1 rushing yard. He doesn't rush too much these days. S. Tucker with the only rushing touchdown of the game, and A. Nelson with one interception touchdown from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense to the takeaway, and it was a pick six, ladies and gentlemen. We had a pick six. And in the first quarter, it was a boring one. It was a 0-0 going into the first. Going into the second quarter, we had a 7-3 Buccaneers win. That was the halftime score, was 7-3. And then in the Buccaneers, in the third quarter, they went up 10-0. And then in the fourth quarter, they went up 6-0. And in the end, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won 23-3. With the only points from the New Orleans Saints came from the field goal, as I mentioned earlier in the video. Moving on to the New York Giants against the Philadelphia Eagles. Jackson Dart, passing yards, 193, 1 passing touchdown. Jalen Hurts, 179 passing yards. This is a brilliant performance from Jalen Hurts, and 4 passing touchdowns, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to the top rusher was T. Tracy for 39 yards in the New York Giants performance, and Saquon Barkley with another 100 plus rushing game of this season, 150 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown for the man of the hour. W. Robinson, 48 receiving yards, and Deacon Smith, 84 receiving yards as well. Jackson Dart, quarterback rushing, he had 17 yards but had a rushing touchdown as well. Jalen Hurts, 22 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns, didn't need one. Moving on to the touchdown scorers, Cam Scatterboo with the front flip into the end zone for a touchdown. It was a 1 touchdown receiving touchdown, and he did a front flip to celebrate that one. And Jackson Dart with 1 rushing touchdown as well. Moving on, Saquon Barkley with a rushing touchdown. Jay Dotson with a receiving touchdown. Go Dart for 2 receiving touchdowns, and Saquon Barkley with a receiving touchdown as well. So that means that there's the 4 passing yards, as well as Saquon Barkley having 150 yards rushing. He had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. So that is the player of the game for me. In the first quarter, it was a very tight quarter. It was 7-7. In the second quarter, going into halftime, it was 3. The second quarter was 3-14, meaning it was a 21-10 lead at halftime for the Philadelphia Eagles. In the third quarter, it was another tight game with a 3-3 third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, again, another one-score quarter with 7-14 for the Philadelphia Eagles, meaning that the Eagles ended up beating the New York Giants 38-20, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said, Saquon Barkley, player of the game for me. Cleveland Browns taking on the New England Patriots. This new-looking New England Patriots are dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. This is a calibration of brilliance. The Cleveland Browns quarterback, 156 passing yards, 2 touchdown passes, and Drake May with 282 yards for 3 touchdowns. It is brilliant. I love Drake May. Absolutely love this boy. He is a brilliant asset to the New England Patriots. Top rusher for this game for the Cleveland Browns was M. Corley, 31 yards. And then for the New England Patriots, T. Henderson, 75 rushing yards and 0 touchdowns. The top receiver for the Cleveland Browns was H. Fanning, 62 yards, 1 touchdown receiving pass. M. Hollins, 89 receiving yards for the New England Patriots. And obviously we had some rushing quarterbacks in this game. We have D. Gabriel with 13 rushing yards. But Drake May made 50 yards on his own rushing. That is brilliant from your quarterback. So touchdown scorers, H. Fanning receiving touchdown, and D. Knoxville the receiving touchdown, meaning that Gabriel had both passing touchdowns. Baduti with 1 receiving touchdown, Stephon Diggs with 1 receiving touchdown, and Henry for 1 receiving touchdown for the New England Patriots. At one point in the first quarter, the Cleveland Browns led 7-3. In the second quarter, the New England Patriots won the second quarter 6-0. Meaning at halftime it was 9-7 to New England Patriots. In the third quarter, the New England Patriots cooked, and they ended up winning that one with a 21-0 advantage. And in the fourth quarter, we saw a 6-2, meaning there was a safety for the New England Patriots in the final quarter to make it a final score of Cleveland Browns 13, New England Patriots 32, meaning that the New England Patriots are still very much running the show. Moving on, San Francisco 49ers, Mac Jones obviously still in for the injured Brock Purdy. Mac Jones, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns passes, and CJ Stroud, obviously another wonderful passing quarterback performance from CJ Stroud with 318 yards passing, 2 touchdown passes. Top rushing for the San Francisco 49ers was Christian McCaffrey with 25 yards, and M.W. Marks for 62 rushing yards for Houston. The top receivers were Jay Jennings for 45 yards, and Xavier Hutchinson 69 yards, 1 receiving touchdown for the Houston Texans. The quarterback rushing yards were Mac Jones, 23 rushing yards, and CJ Stroud, 30 rushing yards. And the four NFL touchdown scorers in this game were Jay Higgins, 1 receiving touchdown, Xavier Hutchinson, 1 receiving touchdown, George Kittle, 1 receiving touchdown, and Jay Tongs, 1 receiving touchdown. Obviously, it was the tight ends week of the show, as they call it. It's tight ends day in the NFL, and George Kittle and Jay Tongs are both tight ends. In the first quarter, it was a 0-3 lead for the Houston Texans. In the second quarter, it was a 7-13 for the Houston Texans, meaning it was a 16-7 at halftime. And then the San Francisco 49ers 8-7 in the third, and then a 3-0 in the fourth, meaning that the final score in this game was 15 to the San Francisco 49ers, but the Houston Texans with 26. That's the Houston Texans now back to winning ways. Just have a quick drink. Lovely. We're moving on, here we go. New York Jets versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, this was a great game. It was a wonderful game. There's a very, very tight result in this. And it was one of the greatest games of all time. And we saw Jay Fields throw for 244 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and B. Hall, which is a backup quarterback, came on right at the end for 1 passing yard to take the knee. And Jay Flacco for the Cincinnati Bengals, 223 passing yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. 2 passing touchdowns. The top rusher, B. Hall, 133 yards, rushing 2 touchdowns. So he's not actually the backup quarterback. I lied. He is a rusher, but he did a pass to a different player, a forward throw, to make it go forward. We don't normally see this from anyone but the quarterback normally throwing the football. But yet, this was a brilliant performance from him with 133 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. And we also saw Semperin of the Cincinnati Bengals with 94 yards with 1 touchdown. And then the top receivers of this game, T. Johnson, 64 yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And Jamar Chase, obviously, we can't forget about Jamar Chase. He is a very, very decent player. And he also had 91 yards, only 9 yards short of a century. Justin Fields, rushing yards, 31 rushing yards. And Joe Flacco with only 14 yards, but he did score a rushing touchdown. So good on the veteran. He is in while Joe Burrows is out injured. B. Hall with 2 rushing touchdowns. T. Johnson with 1 receiving touchdown. And M. Taylor for 1 receiving touchdown as well. That is for the New York Jets. They were the scorers. And then we had Semperin for the rushing touchdown. C. Brown for 1 rushing touchdown. Joe Flacco for 1 rushing touchdown. T. Higgins for 1 receiving touchdown. And C. Brown for 1 receiving touchdown. Meaning both quarterbacks threw 2 straight dimes to make it 2 straight passing touchdowns for both quarterbacks in this game. And the game was anything but boring. It was a 0-10 for the Bengals in the first quarter. It was a 13-14 for the Bengals in the second quarter. And at halftime, it was 24-13 14, meaning that it was an 11-point lead at half time. And in the third quarter, when they came out, it was 3-7 for the Cincinnati Bengals, meaning they extended their lead to 18 points, meaning everyone thought this game was all over and the job was done for the Bengals. But the Bengals did not rely on Jay Fields being a beast. And the final quarter ended 23-7 for the New York Jets, meaning after all that the New York Jets beat the Cincinnati Bengals 39-38 for the New York Jets' first win of the entire season, and we are in round 8. So well done to the New York Jets for getting your first win, and brilliant game that one was. It was full of goats. Moving on, we're going to go to the Monday Night Football, which was the Green Bay Packers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what another game this one was. This one was as exciting as they come, ladies and gentlemen. You had the rookie quarterback from a couple of years ago, Jordan Love, against the most experienced of all quarterbacks still in the division with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is still a beast in the field of the quarterback position. But Jordan Love with 360 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns was the difference with this one. And Aaron Rodgers, not sly of anything, 219 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns in this one. And the top rushers in this game were E. Wilson for 61 rushing yards and Jay Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 62 rushing yards. And Wilson is the Green Bay Packers rusher. Top receivers in this game were T. Craft for 143 receiving yards for 2 receiving touchdowns, and R. Wilson for 74 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And moving on to all the touchdown scorers in this match were Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers, 1 touchdown for rushing. That was the only rushing touchdown we saw. And then we saw T. Craft with 2 receiving touchdowns, and S. Williams with the other one to make 4 receiving touchdowns. To make 3 receiving touchdowns, sorry. And then R. Wilson, obviously, with 1 receiving touchdown. And then, obviously, the DK Metcalf, another well-built legend from the Seattle Seahawks, was released. And he also got on the scoreboard with 1 receiving touchdown. And in the first quarter, we saw 7-3 for the Green Bay Packers. In the second quarter, we saw a 13-0 lead, a 13-0 runaway from the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the score 16-7 at halftime. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then they come out in the third quarter, and the Green Bay Packers beat the third quarter by 7-3. And in the fourth quarter, we saw a 21-6 to the Green Bay Packers to swing it to the final result of a 10-point win for the Green Bay Packers, 35-25 points. And it was an absolute wonderful performance from both players. Moving on to Monday Night Football, which in the UK would be Tuesday morning. That's why I said Monday Night Football, because the Green Bay Packers, for me, would be playing on a Monday morning, where the Kansas City Chiefs would be playing in the UK on UK time. If they were in the UK, they would be playing, we would be watching them around about 1 a.m. in the morning. Which was the Washington Commanders versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Marotta, obviously taking over from the injured Daniel. Yeah, taking over from the injured quarterback at the Washington Commanders, the rookie. He had 213 passing yards for one touchdown pass. And Patrick Mahomes, obviously the GOAT of all GOATs, 299 passing yards for 3 passing touchdowns. Marotta, which is the quarterback, was the top rusher in this game somehow with 28 rushing yards. And Jay Pacheco, 58 rushing yards for the Kansas City Chiefs. The top receivers were McNichols for 64 yards receiving, and Travis Kelce, another GOAT of the sport. Travis Kelce with 99 receiving yards. Marotta, 28 rushing yards, as we've already said, for the quarterback. Patrick Mahomes with 30 rushing yards. And let's get through straight into this with the touchdown scorers of today, with McLaurin with 1 touchdown, receiving touchdown. K Hunt with 1 touchdown. K Hunt with a rushing touchdown. K Hunt with a receiving touchdown. Rice with a receiving touchdown, and Travis Kelce with another receiving touchdown. Meaning the first quarter was Barry Boring. It was 0-0. At second quarter, it was 7-7. So they went into halftime at 7-7. In the third quarter, the Kansas City Chiefs pulled away and said, yeah, right, here we go. 14-0 in the third, and then fourth quarter 0-7 for the Kansas City Chiefs, meaning the Kansas City Chiefs won by 28-7, and Kansas are on a little run of games now. Moving on to my beloved Buffalo Bills. We played in the UK around about 6 o'clock in the evening against the Carolina Panthers, which I have already said on one of my other videos that the Buffalo Bills won by 40-9. It was a brilliant match. Josh Allen, 163 passing yards. He also had 1 receiving touchdown, but don't take that away from only 1 passing touchdown. Mitch Trubisky, which is the backup quarterback, he came on just to end the game because the game was so far adrift at 31 points. He passed for 22 yards, and A. Dalton passing yards 175, which was brilliant. We also saw the top rusher being James Cook with 216 rushing yards and 2 touchdown rushes. And this was an NFL record as well for James Cook, so congratulations to the Buffalo Bill for that performance. And it is brilliant because it is like his 3rd back-to-back game of getting over 100. Ardell, 54 rushing yards, was the Carolina Panthers' best rusher. Shakir, 88 receiving yards for 1 touchdown for Shakir, which was Josh Allen's only passing touchdown. And McMillan, 99 rushing yards, receiving yards for 0 touchdowns. And James Cook, Josh Allen with 7 rushing yards after a couple of sacks, took him back from 50 down to 7. And he also had 2 rushing touchdowns. Andrew Dalton, 2 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns for him. James Cook with the rushing touchdown. Josh Allen with 2 rushing touchdowns, and Shakir with 1 receiving touchdown, and Herbert with 1 touchdown as well. That came in the final, and they went 4-2 and failed to get the 2. So that was a 2-point conversion fail. In the first quarter, it was 3-0 to the Buffalo. It was second quarter, We saw a 16-3. We also, in this process, we also saw a takeaway which went for a pick six. In the third quarter, we saw a 21-0 lead, and in the fourth quarter, we lost 6-0, but we had already won the match and took all our players off. And the Buffalo Bills, as I said, did win a smasher and got back to their winning ways with a 40-9 win over the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers season is still not really up and running yet. But moving on, let's just say one thing quickly. Big game next week. Obviously, this week as well. In this week, it is a 9:25 kickoff in the UK, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and you can see it here live. And you can hear all the feedback during halftime and at full time of my response for this game, as I will be coasting through this one, and we can go through and we will do some more videos on something else. But that is cracking, lovely, jubbly. Thank you ever so much. Great for listening, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I've been Josh. Cheers.